Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
Hey everybody, this is Doug with Youth Worker on Fire, and today I have a friend of mine, Jim Curtis. And Jim is a longtime school teacher and he's not just the average school teacher. I mean, he gives it everything he's got. I've been in his class many times. He's been on a trip with me. He is a world traveler himself and has put a lot of what he knows from his travels into his education as well. But where we really got to know each other a bit was to a trip for hurricane missions rescue after Hurricane Andrew, which was quite a few years ago. When we went, it was because of a student, Jason Magus, and Jason is just a few episodes back. But Jim is on this trip because Jason told me we need to go help those people because he was from there. And he came to my house one day and he said, "Oh, by the way, I invited the school to go with us." And I said, "Amazing." That wasn't the word I used. But anyway, I was like, "You're kidding me." And so we ended up with 55 people on that trip. And Jim, you and your wife were two of those people. So before we even get in the education part, let's start here because you and I have talked about this trip a few times. Tell me your version of how you found out about the Hurricane Andrew missions trip, because I believe we went a week to 10 days after it happened. I mean, it was fresh.
Yes, it was like 2 weeks afterwards. It was, I think it was the Labor Day weekend. That's how we could pull it off.
It was Labor Day weekend. You're absolutely right. Tell me about your experience there. Tell me how you found out from Jason, what happened, and then just tell us your version of that whole story and what you and your wife went through and how it affected you guys.
Well, I found out because I was teaching media productions at the time, and everybody in the media productions class was going. And this was Brad and Jason. I don't want to use people's last names. Christy, I believe, was there. And there were a bunch of other people that were in that class went on this trip. And it's sort of hard, when you're a school teacher and these kids are doing something that's really pretty good and, thinking, well, maybe I ought to be part of that too. So, and I did have a couple skills that you guys could use. Like I could speak some Spanish and had done some construction and stuff like that. So I basically, signed on. And I found it to be very interesting. And I'm from Florida, but I've never seen the kind of damage here that I saw down there.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing for all of us because it's probably a hurricane like no one had seen in, at least 100 years, something like that. It was one of the fastest hurricanes, I think, on record. Is that right?
No, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think there was like a storm like in the 30s or something like that. But in fact, I think there was a couple storms in the 30s that were very similar to Andrew.
Yeah.
But hardly anybody lived in southern Florida then, and a lot of people died, and so there weren't like the reports of all the damage then. But of course, like Miami was 10,000 people or something, at that point.
Yeah, we were in the Homestead area. Do you remember any of the people that you helped while you were there or any of the things that you did particularly?
Well, I remember a lot of the Hispanic people because you had taken us to the Mayan school, and that was the Mom Mayan. And they were basically refugees from their country, and they were sort of scared of people in uniforms. And so, of course, the military showed up after Andrew, and instead of being, a comfort to those people, that was actually scary for them because all of a sudden the military showed up. And so then, you and the person that ran the Mayan school and stuff like that explained the situation to people, and everybody got calmed down. And it was actually, sort of interesting, from a cultural point of view. Everybody there, the other thing is that as a school teacher, you see kids a certain way, and then you go on a trip like that with them where they're doing things, and you see the ones that are really pitch in and really work hard. And sometimes it's not the kid, the people you think they would be,
Right, exactly.
There was one kid who was a really nice kid, and, really pretty. She was a cheerleader and all this other stuff. And, I always thought, she's a nice person and all that kind of stuff. But she was like the hardest worker there. That's the thing about being a school teacher. Sometimes you're always surprised by the kids that show up when you really need them, And by the way, Jason Magus was always one of those kids.
So how did your wife do on that trip?
I think, she's from South Florida, but from north of there. But I think it's really interesting to her too. But we really were so, we were sort of, we always sort of like insulate ourselves, because we're sort of like two peas in a pod almost. And so I think, it was the same kind of thing, I can remember both of us helping some people give their babies baths because they hadn't had water for days, and doing, all kinds of, things that you just take for granted, that, just brought these huge smiles to people's faces.
When you're in a desperate situation, anybody that shows up that really helps are like, answers to prayers for these people. I mean, if it were you, if it were me, and I remember one lady, they took the tree off of her house, and she came out and she says, I've been stuck in here because of that tree since the hurricane. If it was 2 weeks later, then she was in her house for 2 weeks without electricity, without, who knows what else. I remember another one of the families saying that he and his children were huddled together, and all of a sudden the furniture started rattling and shaking, and then it started spinning around the room and went out the windows.
Yeah.
His kids were screaming right in his face, and he couldn't hear them.
I remember that.
Yeah, we do see students differently. I can't take the credit for that trip because I was able to put some things together, but Jason Magus, as a student, was the one who said, we're doing this, and we need you to do this and pull this together for us. And you don't want to say no to a student that's willing to do good things, and he's got a record of doing good stuff.
Well, not only that, I mean, I think that that whole trip was an immense help to the people in that area. Because you're leaving out the truckloads of supplies and stuff that we brought down there too, roofing paper and all kinds of stuff, that people could use. And it was interesting, there was also too, there was nurses, and I think there was a nurse practitioner too. And like a lot of the people there, they hadn't seen doctors or nurses in weeks, So I think that was a really, what Jason did was a really good thing, And it's interesting. I wish, there was sort of a model for that kind of thing, because it's sad that we don't use, education that way, and then like have teamworks between, maybe churches and schools, after, disasters, that you could mobilize, a group of people to help.
Yeah, and in fact, the government makes it a little bit harder on many of us to go down and help. I mean, we didn't ask anybody except for the church that housed us, and I knew the youth pastor, and he was even trying to say, listen, we just went through this ourselves. Can you just wait till the summer or a few weeks or something? I said, well, this train is already moving and I can't stop it. So whether we stay with you guys or not, we're coming. And so they worked it out, and several teams were staying at Key Biscayne Presbyterian at that point.
And you're downplaying your role in this. I mean, that was a major thing. And, you know, finding a place for all those people to stay, that's a pretty big thing to do.
Well, you know, at that time, I did have some connections, and you know, when people are hurting, they know that things are needed, and it really was kind of a miracle trip because I didn't see us doing it that quickly, and the church jumped on board, the school jumped on board, a lot of the students, like you said, yourself and your wife, and that was a big deal. But and listen, I loved coming to your classrooms. And this is Youth Worker on Fire, so youth workers get to hear this. I reach out to educators as well to listen to this podcast because I like to cover all those areas. I was, as a youth pastor, able to be in the school system. I was trained to be with you guys through Youth for Christ. They trained us how to be helpful and not in the way, not annoying. And so my training with Youth for Christ was very beneficial so I could help in school systems and things like that. But you were so kind. Not a few of the teachers would allow me to come by and pop in, and I knew who I could go to and who I couldn't. And you were one of the guys that just were always had walking up open arms. And plus, you were an A++ teacher, and I learned things when I would sit in your classroom for a while. It's seldom. I don't think I ever sat through an entire class of anybody's, but I did remember learning about geography and just the value of different countries, including our own. You talked about religion at one point and even asked me a few questions about that. But tell me about your educational journey, how your travels have, influenced that.
Yeah, when I graduated from high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, I had a chance to play college sports and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I didn't. That wasn't that appealing to me because I felt like I needed to do something. And then so I joined the Navy and became a medic, thinking I was going to go into medicine. And lucked out, didn't go to Vietnam. Ended up going to Rota, Spain for 3.5 years. And then what is somebody who's 18 years old, who's getting paid, like a doctor or a high-paid lawyer or somebody like that in Spain do. Well, I personally traveled every place I could go. And I just had, it was a total learning experience, coming from Mount Dora, Florida, with no humanities, and then walking into museums and to the birthplace of Hadrian and, Moorish castles and all those kind of things. And it just opened up the world to me. And so when I got out, I'm pretty much still a biology nerd. I really like science, especially biology. And so I went to school, and then I would always take 3 really hard classes, and then I would take 1 easy class, just to sort of, have my schedule sort of balanced. And then the easy class, I ended up spending more time than the other classes, and it was in humanities, which I just loved. And all of a sudden, I learned about a lot of the places I went to from other people's, viewpoints, which was interesting because I had one idea, because I had no idea when I went to these places. And then I learned, how other people think about these. So it was actually sort of a weird experience, because I did it sort of backwards of most people, which is sort of typical of me anyway, Eventually, I decided I was going to become a school teacher so I could use that to travel because there's American schools. But the problem was that I went into a classroom and for my senior student teach, and then the lady told me, if you're not any good, you will never be in front of my classroom. And then a week later, I didn't see her for the next 4 weeks. She just let me run the classroom. She was perfectly happy with what I was doing. And no, I mean, and there was, she was doing other school related stuff, but I mean, that just worked out like really well for me. And it was, I found that it's a vocation, and I don't know if you've really talked about that much on your show, but, if you can find that thing, that job that you're sort of meant to do, your life is so much easier.
Yes.
And that's what happened.
Yeah, well, it's obvious if anyone were to see you teach, if they're to see you teach, or students that have had your classes, they would know that you're not the average guy. You're somebody who's passionate about what he does, passionate about his students, passionate about teaching, and passionate about learning, which is key to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah, and I was listening to some of your podcasts because they sounded interesting. And one of them was about how, laughter is important in the classroom. I think most of the kids that had been in my class probably got a laugh or two out of it, Some of them probably, maybe some of the humor went over some people's heads. I know some kids, they didn't like it because here was this guy who's supposed to be this serious person telling a joke. But I really think it's important, happiness and laughter is a good way to learn. But the quickest way to learn, and nobody really likes this that much, I don't think, is when you're under stress. When you're under stress, that's when you have to learn. And so, as a teacher, I think, you have to balance that. And I guess as a minister is the same kind of, thing, or, a youth minister, is where you have to balance that, those two factors.
No, you absolutely do. And you're right. That one on laughter did catch some attention with people because teachers are going through things that are painful in life. Youth pastors, whoever, in the ministry are going through painful things. Students are going through painful things. And they don't have enough people trying to help them feel joy. And laughter does something to your brain. It does something to your spirit. It does something to all those things.
Yeah, I totally, it's actually a chemical process in your body, that when you laugh, it does change things, And most, kids that have been in my classes, they know, all my little sayings, like you're only limited by your imagination, and, the world is, is the way you see it. The way you see it is about your attitude. It has very little to do about how the world is.
Right.
That's advice, of course, it's much easier to give 10 sermons than to just live one.
Absolutely, yes.
I'm just like everybody else. I mean, I struggle and try to do the best things, and I don't, I'm not perfect. I know that for a fact.
Nobody's perfect. That's. I just heard something the other day. The guy said my dad was a preacher. This other guy who was speaking, he said my dad was a preacher, and his best sermon was the one that says, "Good people don't go to heaven, bad people do." And he's going, he caught everybody's attention. What do you mean bad people do? Well, Jesus came to save the lost. He didn't come to save a bunch of good people. He said, I'm here. I'm a physician. I came to heal sick people. God's interested in loving us and doing those things. So that's funny that you're saying that. All of us have flaws, and all of us fall way short. Even humans think is good, let alone what God thinks is good.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the whole struggle, is to keep doing that, regardless, because, even if you do your very best to live that kind of life, if you look at, what happened to the saints and all that kind of stuff, that's not like encouraging news.
Right.
So God, even if you're doing God's work, I mean, you can be tried by people. I don't know. I think you're going to be tried by people no matter what you do.
That's the thing. You are. It doesn't matter where you go, what you do. Now, were you in Central America and South America as well?
Yes, I spent some time backpacking there. My wife and I drove down to the West Coast. I've been to Costa Rica a couple times. I've been in Belize. I tried to go to Tikal, but it was on an election day, and that was not a good idea because in Guatemala, election days mean that the army does terrible things to keep people from going to voting booths. I spent a little tiny time in Panama. I bicycled from Barranquilla, Colombia, to basically Quito, Ecuador.
Wow.
And that was back in the 70s. And that was two of us, no supply truck, no nothing. We had tents, a camp stove, the whole 9 yards. So, that was probably the stupidest thing I ever did and the best thing I ever did.
Well, tell me what was stupid about it and tell me what was the best thing.
Because people that are 6 foot tall are not supposed to be bicycling at 9,000 feet, and above. 9,000 feet, that's the bottom of the plateau. And so, but then the good thing about it is, like, you'd come around a corner and there'd be thousands of butterflies, and you'd just be like cruising through the butterflies. And just being in these places that, to make a long story short, I had to get my girlfriend out of the high elevation because she had a really bad case of altitude sickness. So we went to this village that was about 6 miles from this beautiful waterfall. But the river that this village was on was the Rio Pastaza, and there's thousands of waterfalls. It goes from 9,000 feet to sea level in 29 miles in a straight line. But it's not a straight line, obviously, because I don't know if you've ever been to Yosemite. There's a bridge there. It has a sign. If you would fall in this water, you will die. Well, if you fall in the Rio Pastaza, your chances of survival are like nil because there's so many big rocks and there's so much water going down. And this is one little tributary of the Amazon. It's a pretty amazing place,
Yeah, those are not places to fool around and play stupid. You will get hurt.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess God was protecting fools, because we basically, I got sick. I got some kind of dysentery really, really bad. You know me, I'm a big guy. I got down to like 145 pounds. And when I got back, I was only up to about 165 pounds. Everybody said that I looked like I'd come out of a concentration camp. I got really, really sick.
How many weeks or months were you down there?
We were there 6 months.
Oh, yeah. That's some real, you really got into the place. You knew you were part of that culture. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm about to go to Nova Scotia, and I was going to go up there to do a whirligig festival, but the festival got canceled. But I'm still going to go up there. But I don't know if you've ever been in that part of the world, but that's really, really nice. That's about as wild as you can get. A friend of mine basically said, "Why don't we go out to the middle of no place?" And I said, "I got a place for you." And because they do this festival, and so then I started building a whirligig and all this other stuff. And then I found out that the whirligig festival had been canceled. But I'm still going to Nova Scotia. That's the Bay of Fundy. It's the largest tide on the planet. And then the second highest tide, my mom was brought up in France, and so the second highest tide on the planet is near Mont Saint-Michel. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's this church, and then it was built out on this island, and where there's this other huge tidal shift every day. And so the nowadays there's a causeway, but in my mother's when my mother was living there, they would ring a bell, and you had to rush to get your car, off the sand because the ocean would come, in so fast. So, so that's one reason I'm sort of interested in that. But that'll be a place where there's not going to be a lot of lights. Hopefully, we'll get to see some northern lights. I don't know if we'll actually get the chance. But there should be whales this time of year, and so I'm sort of excited to go anyway.
Those are amazing experiences. I spent quite a bit of time in Guatemala, Mexico, but nothing as extensive. Mine was, a stop here for 10 to 12 days.
Yeah, that's the length of time, though. If you start staying longer than that sometimes, like some people say, after 3 days, or, guests are like fish, after 3 days they go rotten. So maybe after 2 weeks, it's a good idea to move on. I don't know. I'm sure, anybody that's had to deal with me after 2 weeks, they're probably going, okay, I'm glad I don't have to deal with this guy anymore.
There's some truth to that too, right? For sure. Hey, well, tell me this. Here I'm a youth worker, though. Schools aren't really geared for youth pastors and stuff to be a part of them, at least not in the nation as a whole now. What would you say to other youth workers as to how they can be valuable to the schools and as far as volunteers and be helpful instead of a hindrance? Is there anything you'd say to youth workers?
Yeah, I one of the things is to show up at, the parades and, that kind of stuff, just so the kids get to see your face, that's really important, just to be seen and to, the other thing is what I really liked about you, and I don't know, I don't think you were ever really pushed, but you told people, oh, I can provide this service. I can come take this photo for you. I can come do this for you. And if you tell people, let me know what you want me to do, you're probably not going to get a call. But if you say something like, I could take a picture for you of the whole class. Like, I know you're the person that took I'm thinking of the first class at Kurt.
Yeah, I did.
All those kids there, and you were the person that took that picture. And there was a lot of pictures like that you took. And that way, the principal's in there and all the teachers are in there and everybody's in there, the custodians, everybody's there. And then, and you're that person that's helping them all come together as a group, which, so that's one way that's really good. Other ways, you can always help with the tickets, the ticket sales and all that. Teachers hate doing that kind of stuff. The other thing is a big one is to support teachers, because nowadays it just seems like, 2 or 3 people get mad about a book or a teacher or something like that. And, that's just got to be, when you're trying to teach and you're trying to open people's minds, you're probably going to offend somebody. And, I'm really sorry, but I don't know that you can do the two things, without, I don't think that you can teach, about people at a high level without somebody getting offended. And I'm not talking about using people's names and stuff like that, but people take offense to certain things. I used to be one of the state moderators for the state geography bee. This is sort of a funny story. So the last and final question came down to a kid that was of Indian. Both of the kids their families were from India, but one kid was a Muslim and one kid was a Hindu. And so the final question was, and it decided the state geography bee, who had the largest population in the Hindu Kush? which is a disputed territory in India. And National Geographic said it was Hindus. Let me tell you, for like 15 minutes, every person in that auditorium that was Muslim was down there screaming and saying, "No, where did you get that information? That's so wrong." And, it's just sort of funny. This kind of thing.
Oh
happen.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Here's this fact. Oh no, it's not.
I know that had to be pretty intense. Youth said
I thought there was going to be a riot, and this is supposed to be this happy,
right.
the geography meeting. Everybody's happy, and there was almost a riot, and I'm like, oh my god,
what did y'all do? Why didn't you think through that question? No, hey, listen, those things do happen, and especially when you're dealing with a public school situation, and you're dealing with different cultures, different religions, and all those things. And I don't know how public school teachers like yourself did it. Or do it, because it's just as hard. It's probably harder now than it's ever been.
I think that it's harder now than ever. I mean, I know this is off the topic of your podcast, but a person came to me and said, well, they haven't banned any books in Florida. And I looked at the person's eyes and said, they banned every book in Florida. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, they made the law so vague that no teacher knows what book they can have in their classroom. So you haven't banned any books in Florida. You just banned every book in Florida. And that's true. I mean, you go ask any teacher. If they have books in their classroom, they're hidden, they're in cabinets, or they have a sheet in front of them. They're not supposed to have them. And it's so funny from when 20 years ago, every kid was supposed to eat, you were supposed to, your whole classroom was supposed to be full of books. So, it's just, the world has just gone crazy almost to me, And then who decides, which book gets chosen to be left out or whatever, what group is left out. It's so sad.
Yeah, it's once again, because there are so many choices and so much information available and so many changes, it makes life even more difficult to teach.
And it's and now they're fighting the whole cell phone thing again. Now they want to take the cell phones away from students, and here we are, conducting business basically on a cell phone. I mean, we need to teach kids how to use cell phones, not take them away from them. I mean,
that makes sense.
Like I was there when they rolled out the laptops, for all the kids and stuff, or the tablets for all the kids. And, they didn't have anything about cybersecurity, about, they had very little about bullying and all the other things. They should have had like a course that you took online, with your new laptop. And, this is how you stay secure, cybersecurity. This is how you are supposed to be. This is the things that you cannot do, like harass people, threaten people, on and on and on. And then you can take the laptop home. But they didn't do that. They just handed them a tablet. I really don't understand why they couldn't write, a couple short little programs for the kids, to make sure they knew what was expected with these things. Maybe that's why it didn't turn out as well as they expected.
I remember some of that. It seems like they were more excited and proud that they had gotten an iPad or a pad or a laptop for every kid than they were of what was going to happen with it.
I respect that they did that so quickly, but at the same time, you're right. I mean, it was sort of like, here we've gotten it to all the kids, but, the thing is, they didn't really think about it, to start with. And the other thing is how this is, and I'm sure it's the same way in churches. When many of the decisions come from the very top about policy, sometimes when they hit the bottom level, they don't make a whole heck of a lot of sense.
Exactly.
You know?
Right. Well, Jim, listen, man, I'm gonna let you go. I wanted to share you with as many people in the world as we could, because I just think you're a very unique and great teacher, and once again, were very kind to me as a volunteer and as a youth worker through student ministry and being there. And you and I had some experiences together. Hopefully, I'll see you in the coffee shop again.
Okay.
All right, buddy.
Okay, take care.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.